Alright, what's up everyone? It's Mr. Cody, and I'm here to show you some advanced art instruction. So, today we are going to start the first video of our anatomy series. So I'm going to start drawing some of the appendages first, like the feet, hands, then the arms, legs, then how all that, head and how all that connects together. So the first video is going to be about the hands. I find the hands are probably one of the most intimidating things to draw outside of maybe like the full body itself, and some say the face, but hands are very intimidating. That's okay, so this is why I think we should attack this first. So once we get past this, everything else should be relatively easy in terms of mindset. The tool I'm going to use today is a regular number 2 pencil, but if you do have like a charcoal pencil, which I do sitting on my desk here, use a charcoal pencil. You can also use one of your drawing mechanical pencils. I have a couple of those here. You can use that as well if you like. You can use a regular Sharpie like this, which I'm probably going to end up using, so it's easier for you to see what I'm drawing. I'm probably going to use the Sharpie and the regular pencil together just to demonstrate this lesson, but let's start off with the pencil first. So we're going to need a hand reference. Luckily for us, we have one right in front of us, which is actually what we're using to draw. I'm going to use my left hand as my drawing reference, and it's kind of like a model for you as well. So if you want to use my hand to draw, feel free, or you can use your own handsies. So first step, what I like to do is try to break down the hand as simply as I can make it. So the first thing I like to do is just kind of structure out where the palm is. The palm is like most of the hand, or at least half of the hand. The palm is about half of the hand. So I know the palm shape is kind of like a little funky rectangular shape. It's about the palm, right? Next, you want to now start to draw out the knuckles and where they sit, because this is like the pivot points for your hand, because the knuckle is where your fingers kind of move on, or the joints of your fingers are where they move from, right? So knowing where those is very important to know the placement of your hands depending on what you do with them. So one of the things you may notice about my hand in particular, or any hand, is the knuckles kind of fall into a nice even curve amongst each other. So if you want to, after you draw your palm, you could then draw a nice little indication of this curve. Now, drawing lightly, as I'm sure you've all heard before, since this is more of an advanced art video, or if you haven't, drawing lightly is very important. I'm drawing kind of heavy, so you can see it on camera, but you want to draw a curve that your knuckles will follow. Next, I'm just going to draw on some simple circles for my knuckles, 4 for the first fingers, and 1 for my thumb off to the side. Another thing you can do with the thumb, if you really wanted to, is you can add like this little triangular shape that connects to the palm, just to help indicate where your thumb will fall. So that's kind of just off to the side, a little, triangular shape. Nothing too crazy. You can even draw it after you draw your circle there. So now I'm just going to draw in my knuckles. Be mindful of where it's placed using your reference, which is if I'm using my hand, if you're using my hand as well. Be mindful of where that sits. So the pinky knuckle kind of sits on the outside of the hand, while your pointer finger sits on the inside, and your other two kind of sit in between there in the middle. Now, the next set of joints on your finger, they kind of follow that same similar curvature, but now they're not going to be as even because your fingers kind of have different lengths. Some people's fingers are more even than others. Mine has like a bit of a distinction in between the length, but some people are similar. So you can draw yet another line if you like. Trying to be mindful of how, like your reference, always check back with your reference whenever you're drawing anything. So now I'm going to draw in the knuckle for these fingers here, being mindful of where they sit in reference to each other, because that'll be easier for your drawing portion of the exercise. And finally, if you want to, you can even distinguish the final joint on your finger in the same way. Your thumb won't really fall into this part of it because it's kind of out of his reach, but you can add this one if you want to, if it makes it a little easier. And I think I mentioned in other videos, if I haven't, then you find the more you draw these things, the less you need as many guidelines, but this is just kind of a way to approach it at first. So now, what I have drawn now is my knuckle, my palms, and my joints. So now to connect all of these together, you're just gonna kind of draw everything in a cylinder kind of shape around each knuckle. And if you notice, for my fingers in particular, I kind of have like big knuckles and like slender fingers. So like my fingers kind of curve or bow inwards and then bow out around each of my joints. Your fingers may do something similar or it may not, but I'm gonna draw mine like that. And they kind of just round off at the top. And like I said, the length depends from finger to finger. Another thing you want to notice is how there's a little curve in between the web of your fingers. It's not really sharp, but it is a curve. It doesn't directly reach where your knuckles are. It sits a little bit above it. So keep that in mind. It's a little curve, nothing too crazy. All right. Like I said, my knuckles, my fingers kind of have indents in between the knuckles before they go to each other. So try to draw things in as little amount of lines as possible, just to try to help you keep your sketch a little neater. But I find it more comfortable to take the sketcherly approach, which is just a bunch of lines over and over again. But I do know that neater sketches are easier to work with, but you can always erase what you don't really like. All right. So now I have my main fingers drawn out. All right. Typically speaking, you find that the palm, if I use my thing as reference, a palm is kind of about the same size, or your palm is as long as your fingers are. So you kind of want this to be halfway or the same size. You can also measure with your pencil, so that's like about half. It's about the same. So keep that in mind when you're drawing. Just one of those subtle things I just kind of thought about. So now to add in the thumb, similar thing, except you notice when you kind of extend your thumb, it has a little bit of a curve back. So just gonna incorporate that curve, putting in the palm, and then you're gonna curve the thumb into your pointer finger. All right, I made these fingers super slender, but you can always adjust it by either A, making some parts wider than others. So I'm gonna now outline this hand with my Sharpie so you can see it a little better. All right, so now we got a hand. So that's the general step of doing things. Now that approach applies the same way depending on no matter which direction you turn your hand. So if I want to now turn my hand, let's say like this is how I want my hand to be drawn. I can start with the same thing. Start with the palm first. Draw the general shape that the palm falls in. All right. So now I have the palm. Next, I could draw in the knuckles. So pointer finger sits. Knuckle sits there. Middle sits there. Ring sits here. Pinky sits here. I could draw in the triangle shape for my thumb. That's more towards the middle of the palm, because now you start to see the pad of your hand. Start to see that now. I can draw in that same similar triangle shape that kind of feeds into itself. Then I can add in the knuckle for my thumb. Here's where drawing lightly is going to be very helpful, because now you're going to start to notice with all the lines laying on top of each other, it's going to become harder to differentiate each thing. So starting lightly and gradually building on your value, it's going to be very helpful here. But like I said, I've drawn kind of messy for a while, so I can kind of see through things, but I'll definitely darken up the main portion of everything for you so it's easier to see. But Same exact practice. I'm gonna apply the curves like I did last time, just so I kind of know where everything sits. All right, being loose with it. I know my knuckle sits here. Boom, have my little one here. Boom. Same applies for this one. Boom. Boom. Like I said, utilize your reference. Always look back. Alright. And then the thumb from the angle I'm looking at, it might be a little bit different for you, but from my angle, kind of sits over all of this. So I'm going to kind of draw the knuckle part here, overlapping. So it's going to look a little messy in this area, but once I outline everything, you'll be able to see. Then now I'm going to draw my fingers the same way. You can even start to incorporate some of your overlapping lines. All right. Be mindful of the angle of your fingers. Sometimes my finger has like a little curve to them. Like I said, from my angle at least, your angle may be different, but my fingers have like a little curved angle to them. So I'm just kind of making that happen. All right. Don't be afraid of making it look messy, because practice. This is your time to make them all not look all perfect and then all that stuff. All right. And then my thumb, gonna draw that in there. You notice I'm not worrying about like the nail or none of that stuff yet. You see, I've added intersecting lines based off of how they interact with each other. So with this really quick demonstration of hands, I want most of your practice to be actually trying this. I don't want to like, do too much in terms of like over bombarding you with too much instruction. This is more of like a practice thing. So you have the general idea of how to like, structure the hand with guidelines. So I want you to just put your hand in at least 10 different poses and draw them really simplistic like this. And if you want to like make the instruction a little bit more difficult, try to add detail, shading, shadows, and all that. I'm just teaching you how to get like very simplistic forms of the hand. So with this practice, and then next week we'll touch into another part of the body, and then as we go, add more detail. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was real quick, just to get you out there practicing with something that you may not be too comfortable with. And I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something, and go out, be great. Have a good one.